Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, we're going to remove all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that the wheel's off, we have a nice clear view of our tie rods right along here. We need to start with the jam nut here. Let's go ahead and use a 21mm wrench so we can break this free. After that, continue on to removing the nut for your outer tie rod. We'll use a 21mm for that. Now we're going to take our hammer, we're going to give this a couple loving bonks. Essentially, we just want to break the tie rod end free from the knuckle. Next, we're going to start removing the outer tie rod end from the inner tie rod end. To do this, we're just going to go ahead and turn it counterclockwise, and what you want to do is make sure you count the amount of turns it takes to remove this. So that was 1, 2, and so on. All right, once you have that number, go ahead and write it down. Now the next thing that we're going to want to do is remove this jam nut right here. To do that, you want to hold the inner tie rod end so it can't spin, and then we'll use a 21mm socket to remove this. You could use a wrench. Ours is a little stripped, so I'm just going to use some locking pliers. Once that's out of the way, let's continue on to removing our bellows boot. To remove that, you're going to find 2 clamps. There's one on the outer portion here and one further in, which I'll show you in a second. For this one right here, I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze on the ears with my pliers. We can go ahead and slide that down and off of there. We'll just inspect it, make sure it's reusable, set it aside. The next thing I like to do is just try to break this free. Sometimes what you want to do is just take something small like a pick or a small screwdriver. I'm going to carefully try to put it inside here a little bit. And now I'll just spray some penetrant inside that area. Just try to work it around. There we are. Now we've got that broken free, so we can continue on to the inner clamp. Now to remove the inner one, something that I want to mention is it's a single time use. Essentially, we're going to look right inside this corner right here, and you're going to find pretty much like a circular metallic tab, and then it goes around this whole thing. The way that I pop this free is just with a nice long pry bar. I'm going to carefully slide this in here. I'm going to try to rest it directly up against it, but making sure I'm not going to damage the boot in any way. We'll give this a little bonk. All right. See if I can grab that clamp. Here it is. There's the tab that I was aiming for. It was pretty much directly in this area. Go ahead and grab onto that bellows boot. We'll give it a little twist here, remove it from the rack, and slide it off at the inner tie rod end. All right, now it's time to install the bellows boot for this. Let's go ahead and take a wire tie, or of course, if you happen to have the proper clamp for it, you can put that on as well. Slide this right through. Essentially, I just want to get it ready. I don't want to go ahead and tighten it any. We can slide this in and over the power steering rack. Once we're sure it's bottomed out, we'll go ahead and tighten this up. All right, I'm just going to give it a little spin here just to ensure that it's completely situated. Let's take some long nose pliers. We'll just go ahead and snug this up. All right. Once it's nice and tight, just trim off the excess. Now we're going to make sure that we clamp this down. Just make sure it's nice and tight. And then trim it. Now let's apply some copper never seize on the threaded area of the inner tie rod end. Install your jam nut. Now we can install the outer tie rod end. I'm first going to just start turning it a little bit until it gets started, and then we'll continue on by turning it in the same amount of times as it took to remove it. Now we can take the outer tie rod in. Let's line it up with our knuckle here. Start sliding it in there. Grab that jam nut, bring it down into place. Now it's time to install the nut for this. You want to pay attention to the hole on it. A lot of times you're going to find that it's a locking nut, which essentially means that on this one in particular, it's a little oblonged on one side as opposed to the other. For that, we just want to go ahead and take the circular side. We'll put it right up against here so the oblong side is facing down. Start this right on here. Now we'll snug it up and torque it to manufacturer specifications. Now that we have it snug, let's go ahead and torque this nut to 76 foot-pounds. Now let's go ahead and tighten up our jam nut on this. To do that, I always like to hold on to the tie rod. If you grab onto this area here, for us it's a 22 millimeter, 7/8, you can use that as well. We'll also go ahead and snug this up with our 21. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then we're just going to inspect the tie rod. You want to make sure that it's pretty much parallel with the ground. Typically, it can be tilted a little bit, and you want to make sure it's not. Okay, friend, we got our part installed. What's left to do now? Now you're going to want to go ahead and take it for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.